Hello and welcome to the StarCommand podcast. I'm David Seymour here with my good friend Alan Bragg. Would like to ask that if you could go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, show us some support and some love as we just navigate this thing and try to get our dreams off the ground and running. We are now headed into week 3 of the college football season, and we are headed into week 2 of the NFL season. A lot of great storylines have already started to play themselves out. I think the biggest one for me from this past week in college football, Alan, is Texas's complete dominance over Michigan in the Big House and against a professional defensive coordinator, right? Wink Martindale, long history in the NFL with the Baltimore Ravens and the New York Giants of putting together masterful defensive schemes. And the way Quinn Ewers was able to take command of that Texas offense and just really dominate the entire game.
Yeah, absolutely. That game was over at halftime. It was 24-3 at half, and no one paying attention to that game thought Michigan had a chance. I mean, they really Texas came in and just put their throat on the neck immediately, and held Michigan to one offensive touchdown and 80 yards rushing. And if that's not a flip from last year, right? I mean, that was a team Michigan was going to run it down your throat and just couldn't do it. So Texas not only has the quarterback, they've got the defense. They win the trenches. So they're a very impressive win.
And, I spoke last week a little bit about Texas's ability to handle the success, right? And that coming into coaching as far as making sure that there's not this big head as you go into a game today that you could easily lose if you're not paying attention in University of Texas, San Antonio, because we just saw that with Notre Dame, right? They get their big week 1 victory over Texas A&M. We think that they've punched their ticket to the playoff, guaranteed spot. They have the big win on the road, and then they go and blow it all to Northern Indiana University, right? A team that they were favored by 28.5 or 32.5, something crazy like that. It was a huge spread. And Northern Indiana doesn't cover, they outright win.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what were some of the big storylines that stood out to you from week 2 of
that
college
Texas
football?
was something I was going to talk about. Just that dominance, they look great. I think that Florida Stanford game was interesting because I think Florida might have found a quarterback. DJ Lagway. I mean, he came in. He's 18-25, 456 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. He had 3 touchdowns over 35 yards. He had a 36-yarder, a 41, and an 85, which big play offenses in any offense, you want that. You don't want to have to take 10 to 15 plays to get down the field. You want to be able to, hit them over the top. That's got to excite the Florida fans. They needed something, and I think having a quarterback that's a dual threat get in there, I just found that to be a good storyline because they play. I was trying to pull up the schedule when you were talking earlier to look at something.
They played Texas A&M today.
They got Texas A&M at home. That's right. So that let's see if that transitions this week.
And I think it's interesting that you brought that up because I was watching a clip of a Billy Napier press conference talking about that both quarterbacks are going to get playing time this week, who's going to start and how they're going to do that rotation will be interesting to see, because I agree with you after seeing the stats and the highlights and all of that, I thought DJ Lagway's got to be the starter here, right? Very highly touted recruit coming out of Texas, chooses Florida, knows he's going to have to sit behind Graham Mertz, and Graham Mertz did not look good in their week 1 showdown with Miami.
And that might be Napier's downfall.
Right.
Because sometimes the eye test wins. And what everybody saw, the kid's athletic ability and the way he could get the ball down the field, you're already looking at having a losing season with what you had. You've seen what happened in a big game. Man, this is your opportunity to get the fan base rallied behind this kid, turn it over to him and go. And then if somehow you finish one game above 500, it's about building the future. You're talking about how much time DJ got this year, and you can sell that. But you go back to your original starter, and man, I think he's going to make a huge mistake there if he doesn't just roll with this kid.
And I agree. And granted, the Florida Gators themselves won a national title using the dual quarterback back with Chris Leak and Tim Tebow, that first national title that Urban Meyer won out there. But history has proven that the majority of time, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none, right?
Absolutely.
The dual quarterback system doesn't usually work. Offenses can't get into any kind of rhythm for one certain play style because
And Tebow had a specific package.
correct.
He had a specific set of skills, especially his freshman year, that he was going to run the ball. It was a package of Tim Tebow running short yardage, goal line, and that's not what he has here. He's got two pocket passers. One's a little bit more mobility, but
Correct.
yeah. And those guys need to be in the flow.
Most definitely. And I think for Billy Napier, right, this is the time to make the final decision, right? Maybe you go into this game, you allow both of them to play, and then whoever has the hot hand through the first quarter, that's who you keep in. Because what you can't do is go 0-2 at the Swamp in big games against big opponents, right? Beating Samford, that's what you're supposed to do, right? They're an FCS school. You're supposed to go in and handle business like you handled business. So you've accomplished that. But this is your crowning moment of how your career is going to continue in Florida, whether it's going to or not. Is this game right here? And it sucks to say that in your third game is going to determine whether or not you get to keep your job or not. But I believe that that's where we're at. And I agree with you that DJ Lagway is the answer here and has to be the answer here.
Yeah, well, you can't afford to go out and yes, you try both early, but you cannot afford to have a third game where you start slow. Started slow, never got going against Miami. It was only 14-0 against Samford at half.
Right.
They were working through some kinks, and then they got some big plays and things started kicking. So I feel like you just got to keep that momentum going. And what I would imagine you give him 90% of the reps that week. The team's fired up, and you go into against A&M and go for it. But you could easily pull back on that momentum by doing switching out quarterbacks. But we'll see. That'll be an interesting storyline to keep an eye on. So
Yeah.
let's see what Napier, because he's got to be tighter than I think
Oh,
it's something
yeah.
Paul used to say.
Most definitely. I thought another cool thing from this past week is, I picked your Arkansas Razorbacks to really just get smoked by Oklahoma State, and they took that game into overtime. They played tough.
Double overtime. Should have never got there. What a roller coaster of emotion Saturday was. Dominated the first half. Just dominated. Oh, I think Ollie Gordon had 9 yards, maybe. I mean, it wasn't 9, 16 yards at half. I mean, just ridiculous, shutting them down. The only score they got was a pick six.
Mhm.
We left points on the board though. We had a dropped pass in the end zone, and then that immediately a pick six a couple plays later. So not only were we could have been up 28-0, or at the time, I'm trying to think how it worked out. It might have been 21. Anyway, we drop a touchdown. They get a pick six. It's 21-7, or I think it was 14-7. So it could have been 21-0, us kicking off. Instead, it's 14-7. We later scored, but it could have been 21-0. Wheels are off. Here we go. Let's go. We're
Yeah.
pig. And we just let them hang around just enough in that first half to where we were doing everything right. They were doing everything wrong. And then that script flipped. And then we couldn't catch the dang snap. We were turning the ball over, fumbling punts, and they just kept coming slowly but surely. And somehow we forced overtime, forced a double overtime, and then just, it was a heartbreaker.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are always tough games to be a part of. And then Florida State losing to Boston College, right? So they're 0-2 coming in. They have the bye week last week, and they come in against Memphis this week. And while I don't know that he was on the hot seat at the beginning of the season, I think that the whispers have started that maybe Mike Norvell just built a team and didn't build a program. And so I think this is going to be an important game for Mike Norvell, facing his old team in Memphis, where he used to coach, and being able to put something together, because they've not ran the ball very well. They've not thrown the ball very well, and they've played zero defense up to this point in this season. And Memphis is probably the best group of five team that's out there. I forget who it was that they played last week, but they were toe-to-toe with them for the whole game. They ended up losing a close one at the end. And so I think we could be on the verge of maybe two prominent.
Memphis is 2-0. They beat North Alabama and Troy.
Okay. Troy was who it was that they played. So they did go
38-17, and then they shut out North Alabama 40-0. So yeah, they've
they've got a decent program up there in Memphis. They've kind of been on the verge of kind of breaking out the last couple of years. And so I think this could be a game that maybe decides Mike Norvell's future as well, because if in these prominent colleges, right, these, so to speak, blue bloods of college football, the Floridas, the Florida States, all of these schools that we always expect to be good, you don't get a long rope. And even though you should have been playing for a national championship last year, to start your season 0-3 kind of takes you into the complete opposite spectrum of everything. And it'll be interesting to see how that works out for Mike, if that's the case. If they don't look very good, or even if they win the game, but it's a close game and they still look like they're struggling with all of these areas.
Everyone in Seminole Nation is fed up. Their DJ is going the opposite direction. They just it's funny. There was a video online. I sent Jacob, my stepson. I said it had them taking snaps, and it had like coaches chasing players with water guns in the background, And I said, hey, this is what's going on at Florida State practice. It's just hilarious because everybody's kind of jumping on them right now. But yeah, to be only favored by less than a touchdown with Memphis coming to Tallahassee, really just makes you go, wow, that's how bad it's gotten. And I'm sure there's other coaches that have gotten fired after a national championship or after the year that Florida State had. But I can remember Gene Chizik with Auburn. He won a national championship, and I think he got fired if it wasn't the next year, possibly that second year, halfway through the season. Like he didn't. They were like, "Get out of here!" Even though you're just coming off a national championship, that rope is very short.
It is, and it's because they don't want one championship, right? They want time at dominance. Nick Saban was allowed to have a bad year here and there because every year they were in the mix, right? That one or two games that he was going to lose every so often wasn't a huge deal, because even if he lost one,
that you say bad year, he was allowed to have a bad year with 2 losses,
right?
give me that year.
Yeah.
Once every 5 years, just give it to me.
Right. And so, but the leash gets shorter on these big schools because they want programs built. They don't care about the one undefeated season and close to a national title run every so often, right? I need consistency year in and year out. And to go from what you were last year, completely dominant in almost every phase of the game, to this year looking like that you're fielding a Pee Wee League football team when you stack up against people. It's just not a good look. So I'll be keeping my eyes on this Florida State Memphis game to see how it turns out. I've actually got that as one of my picks for later on in the game. So
nice. Yeah, Florida State, everybody that's whooping them, they need them to keep winning, and that's not happening either. So it's perfect storm for those guys, and you did call that.
Yeah. Oh, so transitioning into the NFL, right?
You want to just throw our college picks out there?
Let's do that. Let's go ahead and do that.
All right, let me throw mine out there to you. All right, so I'm last week I went unfortunately I went 2-3,
Mm,
which puts me at 4-4 overall with NFL and college, but some tough upsets last week. Iowa State going into Iowa and winning, that was a great game.
yeah.
Ole Miss, Middle Tennessee didn't get anywhere close to the over. Way off on that one. And I had that over at 62.5. When that game kicked off, it was 58. 4.5 point difference. So no
Wow.
money was going on the under. So bad call, Alan. Bad call. All right. Just gotta be transparent here.
Yeah.
So this week I've got Oregon State is plus 17 at home against Oregon. Boise
Oh,
State covered for me against Oregon last week.
yep.
I'll take a rivalry game, 21 points. Give me 3 touchdowns in Oregon State.
Okay.
This one went off, had to go off the beaten path to find this one, but I like it. Looked up some stats. FIU
Okay.
+4 against Florida Atlantic. I'll
Okay.
take that. I think that Florida FIU can win the game, but give me 4. And then Georgia Bulldogs plus
Okay.
20, excuse me, -22 against Kentucky. I'm gonna finally bet on a powerhouse, and they're gonna go and destroy Kentucky. That's my
I,
3 for them.
I like it. So, I've got Alabama -16 at Wisconsin. It's
Picking a
just
big
SEC,
game.
yeah, SEC versus Big Ten. It usually goes the SEC's way, right? And Wisconsin hasn't been the Wisconsin of old here lately. I know that Alabama struggled with USF, the University of South Florida, last week. But if you remember Nick Saban's final year in college, they struggled with the University of South Florida last year. Jalen Milroe ended up getting benched
That's
after
the
that
game he got
game.
benched. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then they went on and completely dominated everything after that. Um, there's Nick Saban's fingerprints are still all over this program. I know Caleb DeBoer is running the show now, but a lot of those Saban philosophies are still embedded into these players. They're not happy about having a close game with USF 2 years in a row. So I think they're going to go into Wisconsin and just really show who they are and what they are. I've got South Carolina +6.
Oh, I like that one too.
Yeah.
LSU.
LSU,
Yeah, I
just
like it.
Brian Kelly's I don't know that Brian Kelly's an SEC coach. He had a great career and a great run at Notre Dame, took him to a couple of national titles. I mean, they got blown out every time they played in one, but I just don't know that he's a Southeastern Conference coach. He hasn't been able to really put together a real good season. I mean, they've had decent seasons, but not what LSU expects. South Carolina's looked pretty decent this year. I don't know if they win the game, but I definitely think that they cover the 6.
They're what, 6? Yeah, +6.
Yeah. And then I've got Memphis +6.5. I actually think Memphis wins this game. Florida State's not shown me anything that on the football field that says that they know how to play football anymore. And Memphis is a really good football program. So again, probably the best of the group of 5, could probably maybe be vying for an at-large bid at the end of the season, especially if they beat FSU, kind of go undefeated in the group of 5 play. So I'll take Memphis +6.5, and those are my
Nice.
3
I
picks.
really like this. So I went back and forth on the Alabama too, because like I pick in Georgia. I'm like, these dominant teams, let's try to start riding with them instead of just trying to find smaller spreads. And if you think back, Texas was a gimme. If you really looked at that Texas Michigan game, yeah, they
Right.
went to the big house, and you remember last year, but in reality, you could have seen that happening.
Yes.
All the sign writing was on the wall. Same thing here. Wisconsin's not the Wisconsin of old. Alabama is Alabama.
Yeah.
And what was that spread? 14? 16?
16.
16. I like that. I may go add that to my list as well, win some money. I like
Yeah.
it. I also went and added that Arkansas Oklahoma State game. So I was like, it's not me with the pick, and then Arkansas goes out and both blows them out in the first half. And I'm like, David.
Those are always hard. I try my hardest not to bet on my team because if I bet one way or the other, at the end of the day, all I care about is them winning. But then if
Absolutely.
they screw up the money somehow, like if I
Yeah.
go out and I don't even know what the spread is. I haven't even seen a spread for the Texas game, but I'm sure it's in the 30s against the University of Texas San Antonio. And if I go out and take them because they should beat that team by 30 plus points, you know, and they don't because they rest their starters or they struggle with the mentality of we just beat Michigan at Michigan, that whole because that's something that Texas has been known to do,
They're
they kind
minus
of get
35.
yeah, I figured it was over 30. So I try to stay away from those. I did pick Texas last week, -7 over Michigan. I figured that it would be close early and they would pull away, and it was not. They just completely dominated. And I was 1-2 last week in college, and that puts me at 3-3 on the season.
Look at
So
us. Average, a couple of average Joes here.
right,
Look at
right. Don't
us.
we ain't gonna
Losing
get
juice.
we ain't gonna get you
Losing,
rich over here. That's for
losing our
sure.
juice. Hey, one more thing I noticed I had on my notes here. Let's keep an eye on Missouri.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
they're
They've
2
been
and
looking
0.
good.
They've yet to give up a point.
Yeah,
I'm looking to see who they played this week, but I had him written down as a surprise of like, you expect it. Called out their quarterback receiver for Heisman
Heisman watch.
watch,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if the defense is legit and can perform with the offense, man, that's going to be a
That
team.
they are going to be a dangerous team from what I've seen some of them so far.
And there's no way they're off this week, is there? I don't see their game.
No,
No way we're already into bye weeks. Missouri.
I just saw something about who they were playing this week too, and I know they're playing in. I'm pretty sure they're playing an SEC opponent. I think they start their SEC schedule this week.
No, there it is. Bono, Boston College.
Oh, that's
That's
right, Boston
yeah,
College.
that's right. Yes, I saw that too. Yeah, Boston College is 2
I think they're
0,
like a 16-point favorite or something.
14 and a half. And let's
14
see
and a
here.
half.
Okay, I did look at this because Boston College obviously beat Florida State
Right.
and 28-13. Good game, dominated them. And then they played the Queens and beat them 56 nothing. So, and
Yeah.
they're ranked 24, top 25 matchup. So another big game on the slate today.
That'll be an interesting game because this will be by far the best offense that Missouri's played so far. So this is going to be the biggest test for that defense and how far they can help carry this team. So yeah, that'll be a really interesting game to watch. I might have to make sure to put that one on.
For sure. And I may add that to my list. I like that 14 and a half. I think Missouri rolls them.
I think so too. Might have to add that to mine too.
6 in the country. They're a team of destiny this year. I'd really like them to be solidly in the playoff and
Yeah.
handle some. Another one of my 13 of my playoff teams that I picked took a tough loss last night. Arizona.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, UNLV. UNLV's a decent little team, but
they are.
they got beat. What was the score of that one? It was 20. No, I'm sorry. They lost to Kansas State. That's right. It was UNLV beat Kansas. Lost 31-7. So didn't show up at home. No, they were
Yeah.
at Kansas State all over the place.
Mm,
They were
One
at
of
Case, but they lost. They were one of my playoff teams. And so there's SMU and Arizona
out of
getting
it.
early.
Well,
Because even those,
Colorado's out of it too because they got absolutely destroyed by Nebraska. Like,
yeah, yeah, they did.
talk about teams looking like Pee Wee League teams against real college programs. They looked,
When you get to a point in the game where you're like, take the field goal just so you can get some points on the board, so you
yeah,
can try to give your team a positive, it's not going well. And that's what it
no,
was. It got to when they would get in the red zone. I forget if it was the end of the half or like early in the second half. It was definitely at the end of the game. But I think at the end of the half, it was like, okay, they might get a field goal, right? And just give them
yeah,
some little bit of momentum, and it was bad. I mean, and they're getting it. They're going to continue to take it because they put themselves out there.
Yeah.
Um,
And
Limelight, it's going to be rough if they don't turn this around.
yeah, the Dion experiment is not looking good. So I might be starting to jump on board with a lot of the other people that I hear talk about this, and this was just a way for Deion Sanders to get his kids into uh, a more notable program to help their draft stock because Jackson State wasn't gonna do it. So
Well, I think Dion wants to go to the NFL. I think his plan, he had this pipeline, and yes, going not only Shadur Shiloh getting to the NFL, but him going along as well. Because trust me, at Dallas Cowboy people love talking about our Cowboys and who we're going to hire after McCarthy. Dion's been mentioned, as crazy as that is, right? Never would it happen, but that gets mentioned, and
right.
all it takes is someone to plant that seed, and then some owner GM making that call, and he's an NFL coach.
Well, he better start winning some games if that's his goal because another 4-8 season, and I don't know, based on watching them play against Nebraska, I don't know that 4-8 is even a possibility for him this year. Like that game against North Dakota State might be the only game that they win. Maybe they squeak one through with Colorado State this year.
I agree.
But Colorado State played them very close last year. I think that was a double overtime game.
Should have
And
won.
then
They really dominated them most of the game.
yes,
They had to make some great plays down in the fourth quarter, but I remember watching that game in Savannah, Georgia, and that they had them. Colorado State should have won that game.
yeah, most
And their players
definitely.
have come out and said as much.
Yeah,
One of their players was quoted saying, we hit them in the mouth, dominated them last year, and didn't should have come away with the W. So they know they should have won. I think they're going to come in and probably handle business this week.
right. And they have a wide receiver and a quarterback that were offered like $500,000 a piece to transfer to different schools, and they chose to stay where they're at because of the familiarity with the program and all of that. They weren't sure that transferring to a different offense was gonna benefit them or not, so they decided to stay where they were at. So, you know, you've got dedicated players there at Colorado State, and so it'll be interesting to see if they lose if Colorado loses to Colorado State today. I don't think that they win another game the rest of the season.
Woo. Put that on the board.
Yeah. So, all right, let's transition into the NFL. Crazy week one. The New England Patriots upset the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow. That makes Joe Burrow 1-5 in season openers since he's entered the NFL.
He's 1-8. If you add week two, he's now 1-9, 1-8, 1-9 now. I can't remember if the 1-8 was after the game, but I think it's 1-8 in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Ridiculous, right?
Right. And it's funny that we keep him up here at this pinnacle of quarterbacks, right? It's Patrick Mahomes 1 and Joe Burrow 2.
He did make a Super Bowl. He's got the national championship, so we've seen him do it. And I think that's why
Right.
he's on that pedestal.
And then so obviously, we talked last week that I was going out to Tampa for the week one game that the Commanders had out there against the Buccaneers. So I didn't get to see a lot of football. I saw a lot of scores and highlights. I did watch the Detroit Lions game on my way back. Kind of had it playing while I was driving. And so for me, it was interesting to see that the Patriots were able to pull that off, that Gerard Mayo had those guys ready to play. And then for me, the Detroit Lions really showed that they may be here to stay. Jameson Williams looked really good. He's had a slow start to his season the last couple of years.
Absolutely.
Coming off the injury in the national championship game, his rookie season. Then last year he had the gambling infractions, set him aside for 4 or 6 games, whatever it was. So this is the first year that he's really week one been ready to play, and he gives them that over the top ability, that it seemed like they were lacking. And so for me, through all of the week one matchups, from Thursday night to Monday night, I really feel like that what I came away with is that we have two dominant teams in both conferences. I think in the AFC, it's Kansas City and Buffalo. Buffalo, a team that lost their entire receiving core. There's only one wide receiver on the team that's ever caught a pass from Josh Allen, losing half of their defensive backfield to free agency and salary cap restrictions. Look completely dominant. They started off slow, got things rolling, and came back. And then, of course, they started off week 2 on Thursday Night Football with just a complete domination of the Miami Dolphins from the word go. So I think in the AFC, from my perspective, you have Kansas City and Buffalo, and then in the NFC, it's San Francisco and Detroit. They are heads and tails above everybody else in the conference.
Yeah, so definitely agree with the Bills, how they've been able to piece it together and the way they look this year. It was Josh Allen doing it with his legs week 1, and then it was James Cook doing it with his legs week 2. And the defense has been very solid, especially with the pieces they lost. You see Poyer out there now playing for the Dolphins. And just the way that they've been able to fill in guys. And, Sean McDermott is doing a great job coaching that team. He's a defensive coach. Their defense is performing well. And Josh Allen, looks like if he gets a running game, he doesn't need to throw for 300 yards a game. Think about if he could continue to throw for, 180 and they beat you by 2 touchdowns, that's scary. And the Chiefs, they're enough said. They got the quarterback, they got the coach. They've got the speed weapon back this year. They're going to get Hollywood Brown
Another
back.
speedster.
And yeah, and so really like their chances. Kelsey's not going to have to do it all this year. It's going to hurt fantasy owners, but he may
Right.
have a handful of games where he goes for 100. Gets 8 catches, but their defense is good. So, and then as much as it hurts me to say, obviously the Niners are there. I would say it's a 4-tier system in the NFC.
Okay.
Lions look great, but I think Philly and Dallas are right there
Okay.
with those teams. Jalen Hurts had 3 turnovers against the Packers week 1, and they were still able to pull out that victory. And then you just watch Dallas. Everyone doubted us because of the offseason lack of moves, but what are we doing? We signed our guys, and our
Yeah.
roster was top notch. We've got Diggs back. We lost Bland for about 6 weeks, but we will show. We watched the Saints game at home today, and
Yeah.
those 4 teams though. But Detroit, I completely agree. San Francisco, class of its own. They are tier 1. They just, when you can take a guy out like Christian McCaffrey and not miss a beat on offense
Right.
and make Aaron Rodgers and that defense. I saw a stat where they broke down Aaron Rodgers' throws, and he did not throw one ball to the right side. You think
Jeez.
about that. You think about that. Basically, that's taking away an entire side of the field. Now,
Right.
did San Francisco take that away, or does Aaron Rodgers just not trust his left tackle and not want to turn his head and to his blind side?
Right.
Either or, but the man didn't throw one pass to the right side. And a lot of that's just defense and Aaron Rodgers maybe not wanting to, take a hit from the blind side, but they're in a class of their own. Dallas has to figure something out when we play them to beat them. We haven't yet. Detroit, like you said, they're a well-oiled machine. That was a great game. That game against
Yeah.
the Rams, back and forth. Probably whoever got that ball in overtime was going to win.
Yeah.
Both defenses were gassed, and they didn't even really have to throw the ball. They just ran it down Rams' throat.
Right.
So those 2 tiers, those 2 very, very nice little group of tiers there with Buffalo, Kansas City, and then I'd put the 4 teams in the NFC.
And I can't argue with you on the 4 teams as much as I would like to, since 2 of them are NFC East teams. But you are correct that Philadelphia having 3 turnovers and still managing to win the game. I just is as good as Green Bay is. I wonder how that translates as you start to play some of these some of these better teams later in the season start playing the Dallases, who, if you turn the ball over 3 times against Green Bay, what are you going to do against Dallas with Trayvon Diggs and all of that? And I'm cautious on Dallas because I'm not sure what the Browns are, right? Deshaun Watson looks absolutely inept at playing football anymore.
He does. He
He
had so many passes that were just completely out of the end zone,
right,
not giving receiver a chance. And in the NFL, these guys are the elite at what they do.
right.
They have what's called a catch radius for a reason. You just have to put the ball in a vicinity for these guys to go up. Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, and Njoku. And
Right.
this man's throwing it 15 yards out of the back of the end zone on consecutive plays. And I'm just sitting there watching the game, clapping, going, trash, trash.
Yes.
Like, thank you.
His
This is not the Deshaun Watson of old.
No, it is not. And what I find interesting is that when he signed his contract with Cleveland, there was some sort of stipulation in there about if any more cases come up that they're able to get out of some of the guaranteed money. Well, there was recently a new allegation that came out of the 2020 deal, which puts him up to 26. Obviously,
Came out on
um,
Monday.
yeah.
Believe it or not, he's trash on Sunday, and then they're like, Browns are like, "Hey, you've been holding this."
Who's been holding back? Somebody come forward. We'll give you half the guaranteed money that he's that he's going to be owed.
Go ahead and
You'll
go
just
public with that.
right. And maybe that's what happened. I don't know, but I do know that Deshaun Watson's no longer good at football. And I think the Cleveland Browns as an organization need to find a quarterback. They have too many players, the Denzel Wards, the Myles Garretts, the Nick Chubbs, too many of these core nucleus guys that have been there for the rebuild of this franchise and the hope that Deshaun Watson brought that he has not lived up to. They owe it to these players and this fan base to do something different at quarterback,
Organizationally, they all have to be kicking themselves because they had Baker Mayfield in that building.
Right. I saw a
They
meme
had
the other day that said Baker Mayfield becoming better than Deshaun Watson is only something that would happen to the Cleveland Browns.
Right. That's some Jets and Brown stuff right there. Those
Right.
organizations something happens to because no one would have. Everyone thought that was a good hire. The money is a different subject, but
Right.
the
Right.
signing
Right.
of Deshaun Watson was everybody's like, oh wow, this is what that
Yeah.
team needed. Contract aside, and then here
Yeah.
you are, you have Baker taking his team to the playoffs last year. Again, he's a man in the locker room. People respect him. He rallies the team. And then
Yes.
you have the complete opposite. It couldn't be more night and day of what you have in that locker rooms. And Cleveland's
Correct.
got to be kicking themselves because not only did they just sign the franchise over to this guy with allegations galore, he's getting outperformed by the guy you used to have and you drafted, and you really
Right.
could have,
Who actually took you to the playoffs and won you a playoff game.
and you couldn't wait to get replacing.
Right. And so that's where my only pause on the Cowboys comes at this moment. I mean, as much as I do not like the Cowboys, I do know how to look, at the situation for what it is. And they do have a good roster. I'm just interested to see, and this will be a good game to see that, right? The New Orleans Saints, who just put up 47 points on a very bad Panthers team, but who have kind of had a history of playing good defense and having a decent offense, right? So this will be a good test to see, are the Cowboys really what we think the Cowboys are, or was that just kind of a fluke against a really bad Cleveland offense? And so yeah, I can see where you would put all of those 4 teams up there in the NFC. I think I just have some questions with a couple of them that kept me from putting them up there with you.
No, I get it.
So,
I get it. You hope those NFC
oh
East
man,
teams are not what I think they are. I
yeah,
get it.
no, and I will tell you that um, being at that game on Sunday and getting to watch that firsthand, I really started looking at who's going to be in the top 5 to 10 of the draft that could really help our team next year. Because uh as a Commanders fan, man, I was not impressed with anything that I saw. We couldn't block anybody on the offensive line. Jaden Daniels had a lot of rushing yards, and they weren't designed runs. They were, I've got to get out of here. I heard a lot of our fans complaining about Terry McLaurin not getting any separation. The truth of the matter is he didn't have time to run a route before the defense was in the backfield in Jaden Daniels' face. He did try to hit him deep twice. The first time he was pretty covered. Jaden Daniels threw a good ball to make sure that it wasn't intercepted. The second time he did flat out miss Terry. Terry was wide open for a touchdown. And that's some timing stuff that's gonna take time for a young quarterback and a receiver in game time to get accustomed to. But our defense was, I mean, it was atrocious. Emmanuel Forbes, I don't know why they had him starting, but he is not an NFL caliber corner. And it makes me sick because both Christian Gonzalez and Joey Porter Jr. were there when we picked Emmanuel Forbes. And that's who Ron Rivera chose to take. And we're kind of stuck with him for now. He is going to have surgery on a wrist injury, which I think was more of a, this is our way of benching you. We're going to suggest that you have this surgery so that we don't have to put you through the embarrassment of actually benching you, because that's what he deserved. I forget who it was that came in his place, but as soon as he came in, it was a completely different look. But we've got these two defensive tackles up front, Deron Payne and John Allen, that we're paying a buttload of money to, and neither one of them, I don't think I heard either one of their names called the entire time I was at the stadium. And it was, we had some hope. We had a little bit of a pass rush, but nobody could actually bring the quarterback down. We had Baker Mayfield dead to rights probably 7 or 8 times, and he was able to escape every sack. So it was just it was a disheartening game for me to watch, because not that I expected us to come out here and be world beaters and be contending for a Super Bowl this year, but I felt like that we should look better at playing football than what we did. It looked like the same thing that I've been watching for the last few years, and it was a little disheartening. I'm going to try to trust the process and see where they go. I know Adam Peters is got a great pedigree of the places that he's been a GM or an assistant GM at, and who he's learned from. And I know that Dan Quinn has a good history of building strong defenses and building teams to be successful. So trying to navigate, trusting the process there. But I was not impressed. We were talking before we got on air here about you almost thinking about taking the Giants today. And I wouldn't be mad at anybody for doing that. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who I work with, right, who's a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I pick all of the great friends, right? The Cowboys friend, Eagles friend, but and he was like, "Oh no, Daniel Jones is trash. You guys will be fine this week." And I was like, I don't know that. Like, Brian Burns and Kadavion Thibodeau may have career games against our offensive line. I know that Daniel Jones is an absolute dumpster fire. I saw fans after his game against Minnesota. They were waiting outside after the game talking about, "Hey, Daniel, I need $1 million back. Hey, Daniel, I need $1 million back." They were just really, really critiquing him. But, we may honestly lose this game. I'm seriously looking ahead to the draft and who might be available in that top 5 to 10 range that could really help our team. I would hope that we would get a dominant offensive lineman to go with, our new quarterback and maybe help protect him, because he was running for his life the whole game, and we couldn't open up any holes in the running game for Brian Robinson Jr. to get started. So it was a very lackluster performance on our end. So,
let's see. I had one of my big surprises I want to talk about from week one was, one of my picks was Atlanta over Pittsburgh. And I just thought, easy. That was easy money. Pittsburgh doesn't have a quarterback. They've got 2. They got if you got 2, you got none.
right.
They go into Atlanta, and Kirk Cousins comes away with Justin Fields out passes Kirk Cousins by
Right.
1 yard, but 156 to 155, both terrible. But Justin Fields throws for more pass yards than Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins just did not look like an NFL quarterback. It doesn't matter how many weapons you give a guy. If you're not comfortable in that pocket and you can't elude the pass rush, and you're gonna struggle. And boy, did they. Najee Harris outgained Bijan Robinson. Just in it, and this was in Atlanta. So that probably was my big surprise of all the games.
Right. And didn't
Just
Pittsburgh win that game without even scoring a touchdown?
they did 15-10. Well, exciting NFL game there. Old school football.
Yeah.
Just Atlanta looked terrible, and they've got who's Atlanta got this week? They are playing. They got the Eagles on Monday Night Football.
Oh, they're gonna get. I think they may get massacred in that game.
So so they beat if they start 0-2. Yeah, anyway, I took that away. I already talked about the Niners, uh, and
Yeah.
then Cowboys to talk about. Oops. The some stats from week one. Only two quarterbacks threw for over 300 yards. Tua and Stafford.
Wow.
Obviously Tua won the game. They came back and beat Jacksonville, and then Stafford lost the game. There was under 200 yards. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 quarterbacks throwing for under 200, and only two of those won the game. That
Caleb
was
Williams.
Dak and Geno.
Oh,
Where's Caleb at? He would be on that list too, so I did not
yeah.
write him down. The three won the game. I didn't have him written down, but obviously we know he did throw for under 200.
Right.
And
I
then
think he might have
most,
thrown for under 100. Might be why you didn't have him on the list.
there was 11 quarterbacks that were in that 2 to 300 range, and they won 9 games. So 9 of the 11 quarterbacks. So that was the sweet spot, right? They
Right.
getting the 200 to 299 was the sweet spot for quarterbacks last week. They have good running game, and possibly the running game coming back in the NFL. It's just 1 week, but
Maybe.
maybe. I also, how it is with continuity. Defense is usually ahead of the game early.
Yes, most definitely. I think not that defense is easy to play, but I think it's easier, right? Because it's more reacting to what's going on in front of you compared to having to read it and figure out how to beat it, right? So you were speaking of stats. The one of the biggest stats that I took away in my talking about the Bills' dominance, right, is that James Cook has 149 yards on the season. This past week, he had 11 carries for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns, plus the 1 reception for 17 yards and a touchdown. It's interesting to me that Joe Brady finally, his first full season as the offensive coordinator has the Bills. The biggest struggle that the Bills have had is their running game. And he's kind of looking to make that a feature point and not make it Josh Allen the feature point in that rushing attack, but using James Cook, who really has rested legs for a running back in his third or fourth year in the league, right? He wasn't used extremely much in Georgia, right? He was behind Zadir White and a couple other guys, and he was kind of that change of pace guy for them. And then there hasn't been an emphasis on the running game in Buffalo since he's been there. So I think that's a guy to really watch out for coming into the season. And then the other one that I had was big stat that I thought was interesting was Jameson Williams had a career game against the Rams, right? He had 5 receptions for 121 yards and a touchdown, and he added 13 yards rushing on an end around. So watching some guys that might be prime for breakout seasons, James Cook and Jameson Williams are those. And then I wanted to allude to your Kirk Cousins thing. I was watching. There's a new show on FS1 called The Facility. And it has Sam Acho, LaShawn McCoy, Chase Daniels, and I can't think of the wide receiver's name that used to play with the Packers.
It's either Jones, James Jones, or
James Jones, yes, James Jones. And so
how do you skip?
yeah. And then so Chase Daniel was talking about Kirk Cousin and changing his shotgun stance. He used to be, I guess there's three shotgun stances. There's a right foot forward, a left foot forward, and then a straddle position. And all of the non-athletic quarterbacks, the Peyton Mannings and such, always had the straddle method. Well, his entire career, Kirk Cousins has been a right foot forward person, uses that right foot to push off and get away from the defense a little bit quicker. Well, that's the Achilles that he tore, and now he's become the straddler. So I think it'll be interesting to see if that's something that stays, or if maybe he's just not comfortable pushing off on his right foot anymore, and that's something to watch out for. Maybe that Achilles isn't as healthy as we thought it was.
And that makes sense. I didn't see that, but that makes sense. Seeing some of the sacks he took and some of the throws he didn't make, that he's not mobile. He's not comfortable. The footwork wasn't there. Both he and Aaron Rodgers, right? Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw a ball to the right. Kirk Cousins was not even trying to get away from the rush.
Right.
Keep an eye on both those guys going forward.
Yeah. And the difference between those two teams, right, is Atlanta's got their insurance policy if Kirk Cousins really isn't right. I don't know that the Jets do. I know they signed Tyrod Taylor in the offseason, and he's been a serviceable quarterback, but I don't know that he's the guy that you want to turn the keys of the franchise over to. Whereas Michael Penix Jr., granted, he's a rookie, doesn't have the experience, but played a lot of college ball, and you drafted him in the top 10. That is your plan to eventually turn the keys to the franchise over to him. I'll be interested to watch to see how fast that happens if Kirk Cousins really isn't able to elude a rush, you know. And I think that the other thing that I really wanted to talk about, man, and I've heard a lot of guys talking about it over the last couple of days, and I was even on my way over to the office to be able to film this. I was listening to some guys talk about it, is Tua's concussion that he had. It was really tough to watch. This is the second concussion that I've seen him go into that rigor mortis stage where his whole body just kind of froze up and he, his hands closed up, and it looked scary. And this is the second one I've seen like that. Obviously the other one was him stumbling. And this is only the third recorded concussion for his NFL career, but we know of at least one other one that they claimed was a back injury. And I've heard a lot of guys talk about that he has to retire. And I heard something interesting, and I was going to take that stance today. I figured that obviously you saw it would be something that we would talk about on here. And I was in the camp of Tua has to retire, right? You can't keep going. And I heard somebody, Jeff Schwartz on Fox Sports Radio on my way over here this morning, was talking about that when he was ready to retire, he went around and asked all of his closest friends and family and the people that were really just solid in his life, who he really trusted their opinion, and they wouldn't make that decision for him. He'd had a bunch of injuries, and it was probably time for him to retire. But he had worked through all of that, and they gave him the space to work through all of that. And as much as I would like to see Tua retire and save his brain, I kind of agree with that stance, is that it's got to be something that's going to be his decision. If he's medically cleared to play and decides to play, all we can do is pray that we don't see that again. But it's got to be his decision. Where do you stand on Tua and really what?
So I just, I've had things, playing sports, and it's what I love to do. It's what I did as a kid. I played baseball, basketball. I never played football, but I would have played as long as I possibly could have, and at any time I was injured, there was, you play through stuff. And for these guys, this has been their passion. This is how they provide for their family. This is what they love to do. And we can all sit there and say, like you just did, for his health, for his brain, for his family, but obviously he's thinking about all that.
Right.
And if he gets cleared and this it's his passion, it's what he loves to do, it's what he's done since he's a kid, and he wants to go back out there, they're cut from a different cloth. Most of these athletes, there are the athletes that just want the paycheck
Right.
and the clout, but it's you just can't flip that switch, especially being, I
Yeah.
think he's 24 years old, 26, 24, 26,
26.
26 years old. You know, if he wants to go play, he's probably going to play.
Yeah.
He'll make that decision, and everyone will be behind him, right? He'll be if he comes back, he'll be a warrior. Everyone will be fearful, right? But everyone was fearful when he took off on that scramble.
Yeah.
Watching that live, you just think. Of course, I've never in my life, I didn't play football, ever, never played. I played flag football in college, but
Right.
I don't know what that's like taking off between going for a scramble between the line at Pee Wee football, much less NFL, when
Yeah.
people are flying at you. And he took a normal hit from Hamlin that people, running backs, receivers, tight ends take 5, 10 times a game. And it
Yeah.
just hits different with Tua, for whatever reason. Any hit to his head and he locks up. So I think he'll play again, honestly, just because he's a warrior and that's how they're wired.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't ever. It's like if he retires, we all know why. We get it. And then if he
Yep.
comes back, it'll be like that a boy. And I wish nothing but the best for him because
Right. Most definitely.
all you hear is he's a great guy, great locker room guy, good family man.
Yeah.
And the Dolphins are a different team with him on the field. And we all like watching a good product on the field. And I like seeing the Dolphins, that offense churning, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle getting the ball, those running backs doing their thing. And without Tua, it's gonna be tough. Dude,
Yeah.
what are they gonna do? Thompson can't be the answer.
No, no.
Maybe
Thompson's not the answer.
they got 10 days to get ready for the next. And that, even when he got knocked out, I heard Michael say, they got 10 days to get ready because they don't play till next Sunday. I thought, oh, Tua will be okay by then, right? It was because it didn't seem like that big of a hit. He took a little hit. He obviously was knocked out, but he came back last year
Mm-hmm.
after sitting out, missing a little couple quarters. He came back, and so when you hear he's out for the 6 to 8 weeks, and you
Yeah.
really know it's serious. Everybody's taking it seriously, so
Well,
we'll see.
and I think it's a good thing that they take it serious. You know, what you don't want to see is him try to rush himself back, or the team try to rush him back, or anybody allow this to be a rush process and then he really hurts himself, right? um yeah, it's going to be a real big blow for the Dolphins, but if he can get himself healthy where it's okay for him to come back, and he chooses to come back, I will completely support it. Not that he cares whether I support it or not, but if he chooses to retire, I don't think anybody will look at him crazy either, right? Between the broken hip, the Bo Jackson hip break that he had, his last year at Alabama, to now the concussions in the NFL, he's put his body through a lot and shown that he's tough. I don't think Tua's toughness is ever going to be a question going forward. Um, and I do think that he's a good quarterback, and I would love to see him can be able to continue his career. So I'm glad that they're going to do the 6 to 8 weeks and keep it cautious and bring him along slowly so that maybe he can extend his career. I would love to see that if he does come back. The NFL's made that rule where you're allowed to wear the Guardian helmet during the game now. Would love to see him give himself a little bit of extra protection with that. So I think it's time for us to hit our NFL picks. I did pretty bad with my week 1 picks. The only game that I got right was the Detroit -3.5 over the Rams, and I needed overtime to
You
do
need
that.
overtime to get that one. That was good at all.
Yeah. So my Commanders got completely destroyed. That was my extra pick that I put in last week so that I could match you on the 3 picks. And Green Bay +2 versus Philly was my other one, and I did pretty bad there. So we've got 4 picks for you, a little 4-game parlay. I took the Chargers -5. I just think the Panthers are bad at football. And they lost they're going up against a team that's going to emphasize the run, and they lost their best defensive player in Derek Brown for the season last year with a knee injury. Or last week with a knee injury. So I think that the Chargers, who have proven that they're going to run it up your throat last week against the Raiders, are going to do just that. And there'll probably be another blowout loss for the Carolina Panthers. I've got the Indianapolis Colts -3 playing the Green Bay Packers. Malik Willis is going to be the Packers starting quarterback this week. And I just don't know that he's going to be able to get it done. I think Anthony Richardson and that offense are gonna be able to hit some big shots down the field. Put Malik Willis behind the 8 ball, and he's just not an NFL quarterback in my opinion. And I took New Orleans +4. I do not think that New Orleans is going to win this game, but I think that even though they were playing a lesser opponent in the Panthers last week, I think that they have something over there in New Orleans. They're kind of humming with something, and I think they at least keep it close. I think it's a field goal game at the end. And then
where are you getting that spread that they're +4?
New Orleans +4. I got that off of Bleacher Report, I do believe.
I got them at 6. That spread at 6. I like the 4 because obviously the Cowboys are going to rout them. So. Like, where did you get in that 4? Where's that 4 at? Let me find that.
I believe it was on Bleacher Report was where they were +4 at.
Let's see what Hard Rock's got them at. I'll check on that. What's your 4th game?
And my 4th game is Detroit -7.5 against Tampa Bay. I just think Detroit's for real. And they have an offensive line, so that whole bully ball that Tampa Bay was playing last week's not going to fly. And Detroit has a real offense that can take the top off of a defense. And their play caller, Ben Johnson, is just something else, man. He's got a smarts about him as a play caller. Really wish we could have got him to come over as our head coach, just because that offensive genius. And then their defense, I think Detroit's defense is going to be a lot better this year. Their back end looks better. I know they allowed some big plays to Matt Stafford, but that's Matt Stafford. I think that overall throughout the season, they're going to get better. And I like what Detroit's doing. And I think that they beat Tampa Bay by probably 10 points. So I'll take a -7.5.
All right. I got on Hard Rock at 6.5 in that Dallas Saints game. So that 4 is crazy.
Yeah.
But
and unfortunately, Hard Rock's the only thing we can bet on. So I will definitely take New Orleans +6.5 then.
Look at us. Look at us. Can't wait to talk about that one. You're gonna get some text messages Sunday. No, I told you don't mess with Cowboys at home.
Yeah.
All right, my picks are Cowboys -6 versus the Saints. That it's just a different team at home.
Yeah.
CeeDee Lamb's back in the house. Dak signed. It's going to be, there's a few teams, handful of teams, Ravens, Niners, Eagles, that we're going to be this year. But just watch, we'll handle the same, just like we have the past couple of years. We're going to handle business at home. There's a tier of teams. The tiers below us, we will handle. 49ers -4.5 against Minnesota. Just sticking with the class, right? San Francisco's just a better team. Sam Darnold against that defense, no chance. Even though Minnesota's at home, I think Niners covered by a touchdown easy.
Okay.
Tennessee +3.5 at the Jets. This is going to be a battle. This is going to be one of those teams where I think that 3.5, that half is huge. Tennessee at home, they battled that out with last week with Chicago. And even though Chicago didn't move the ball, who says the Jets are going to move the ball? It's kind of going to be one of those games that each of them fill them out. I'm taking the home team and Tennessee to bounce back, and Jets possibly starting off 0-2. And then
Ooh,
Seattle -3 at New England.
okay.
Just the continuity in Seattle's quarterback situation, running back, their receivers. Metcalf and Lockett didn't have big games last week. The running game kind of dominated, but I think they're going to go into New England and they're going to cover.
Okay.
So there's my four.
I like them, except for that
Yeah,
Cowboys pick, but you know,
I'm telling you. I try not to stay away from Cowboys games. Same with the Razorbacks, but this is one
yeah,
that I stayed away from it last week because that was my eye test. Where after this offseason, Cleveland's defense on the road, where are we at? And I saw everything I needed to see out of the defense. That defense will show up in Dallas on Sunday. Derek Carr will not have a good game. And it's just, I think we dominate the game. You want to
nice.
talk about you want to talk a little bit about fantasy real quick before we jump off
Yeah,
there? I'll stick to
let's
the
do
league
that.
that we're both in. So I went 1-0. I'm 1-0. Had a
Yeah,
great week. I was second highest scoring in the league, and just had some guys really do well for me. Starting with Lamar Jackson, doing great for me. Kamara had a big day. Nico Collins, big day. Xavier Worthy,
yeah,
put him in the starting lineup, and I got him in I think the 11th, 12th round.
yeah. I think you
Yeah,
got him way
he's
late.
yeah, and he's a starter for me. And then Brandon Aubrey, getting me 21 points,
Yeah.
and should have had me 27 because he kicked a 66-yarder that we didn't snap in time.
Uh,
And then you get 27, you get in the 20s from your kicker, you're doing something right.
right,
Uh, and then in that game, he was about to try a 71-yarder. So he kicks a 66-yarder, snapped it right after the play clock hit zero. Ref throws flag. We get a 5-yard penalty. We back it up to 71 yards, and he's out there to kick it. And we're about to snap, and then McCarthy and them decide against it and then don't do it. But man, everybody in the stadium was rooting for that man. Even in Cleveland, fans were like, "Let him kick it, let him kick it."
right. I mean, you got an opportunity to make history. Why not? I mean, you're already up big, right?
Right. It was so 66 yards is the record from Justin Tucker.
Right. Yeah,
The
that was
kid
a
kicked,
walk off, wasn't
yeah,
it, in Detroit for a game winner?
he kicks a 66 yarder, and probably one of the things that the time management with Mike McCarthy
Right.
that hurt from that game because it's like, come on, we know we're kicking the field goal. How do you get a delay game on that? Right? Snap the damn ball, call a timeout. And but I would have liked to see him kick the 71. I don't think he'd have made it because he only cleared it by about 3 yards.
Mm,
66-yarder, he would have put something else into it. And I want him to stay perfect. You don't get it
yeah,
once you get one miss and get in your head, right? So you
most
don't want it to
definitely.
be blocked. You don't want to have that happen. So yeah, in our league, I'll touch just kind of give I'm in my division, I'm in first place, tied for first with three other guys, and then you are tied or you're in seventh place
Yeah.
after your week one. Kind of talk about your matchup. You had a tough matchup, but what exactly happened in your matchup?
Well, the biggest thing that happened in my matchup is that Dak Prescott had no points in week one. Signs a $60 million contract before the game starts and scores all of 9 fantasy points. That was probably the biggest detriment to me. Tyreek Hill went off in week one. He's going to be the detriment to me in week two because he had all of 3 points on Thursday night.
Yeah,
but
I've got him in another league, and that's a tough call. That's tough to do with him, right? Because that's first round. That's our first round pick. That's our
right,
guy that has that high 30-point ceiling that he can do every third game. And what are we going to do with him?
right, and the truth is what to do with him going forward, right? There
Right.
was no doubt to keep him into the lineup on week two Thursday night when two is healthy. You know, you're not going to bench him just
Never.
because they're
Right.
playing the
Yeah.
Bills, right?
Right.
But what do you do going forward if two is not going to play or two is not going to be healthy or you know I know that I got quite a few points from my running back position in that game.
Joe Mixon went off for you. Yeah, Joe
Joe
Mixon,
Mixon went off for me.
Texans had a great running game.
Yes, and I expect that to continue.
He
It
had like
looks like
160, I think. His stats were ridiculous.
right, and so I expect that to continue, especially against a Chicago Bears team that wasn't very good against the run. against Tennessee last week. And I expect Josh Jacobs to have a pretty big game this week too. So they're playing Indianapolis, who doesn't have a very good run defense, for one. For two, you have Malik Willis starting as your quarterback, who's not a very good thrower of the football. So Green Bay is going to be highly dependent on that running game. I look for Josh Jacobs to have a really big game against Indianapolis. So yeah, I mean, I had a rough matchup.
You should be very happy with how many touches Debo got in that Monday
Yeah,
night game.
yeah,
I have him in another league, and the touches were there. He was getting the carries. He was a backup to Mason. He
yeah.
was getting plenty of touches in the passing game. He just didn't find the end zone.
Yes.
But that's very promising for him. Again, he's going to
Well,
continue to get those with C-Mac out. Think that he's
oh
going to
yeah.
get a lot of touches. So if
Well,
he could just break one for a touchdown, you'd have been up in the high 20s.
yes, most definitely. And it's rare for Debo to have that many touches and not make it into the end zone. So and they're talking about putting Christian on IR. So that will definitely increase Debo's touches going forward. I think he'll have a big game this week against Minnesota, who doesn't have the greatest secondary. So he should have a pretty decent stat line this coming week, especially with Christian already being called out for the game. So that's going to increase his touches in the backfield. Minnesota's secondary not being that great. You're going to have Stephon Gilmore's probably their best corner is going to be matched up against Brandon Ayuk. So that's going to leave Debo playing against some secondary defensive guys. So he should have a decent week, and hopefully he can find the end zone this week. Hopefully Dak has a good game and can score more than 9 points, and maybe I'll have a decent run. I need some help with Tyreek Hill's.
And that game happens just because our defense comes out and dominates.
Right, most definitely. There's no reason to throw the ball around. We're going to run it, control the clock.
We had 5 or 6 of those games last year where the offense didn't have to do much. It was 3 turnovers, running game working, get an early lead, and then the second half is just just keeping everybody healthy and finishing the game.
Yeah.
But he'll have a big game this week. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
You got guys to look out for. You're still projected to just lose by a point and a half.
Right.
And you had dismal performance by Hill. So still in there. You got to watch out for Anthony Richardson, Jamar Chase, James Conner, Ray Rice, probably this week.
And I'm curious, do I have to worry about Jamar Chase? They're going up against a Kansas City team that is still playing pretty dominant defense. Game 2 of the season.
Yeah,
the
maybe
Bengals
catching Jamar Chase at the right time, right, for that week 2.
The Bengals and Joe Burrow are horrid in probably their first 5 games of every season. If we really go back and look at it, their first 5, they're a very slow starting team. They're always playing catch up. So it's it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, especially going up against a Kansas City team that looks like they're on fire, and set and ready to try to make the run for the 3-peat. So
yeah, we'll see how it works out. I had to go against James Cook, so I'm already at a disadvantage.
He had a big game.
Yeah, he did. And I got
how many points did he end up with that?
28.
Ooh, yeah, nice.
He did. I fortunately in another league I had Cook and Achan. So I got out to a heck of a start.
They both
almost put up 30. So that's a great start for Thursday night right there. Almost
right.
50.
Yeah. You're at almost 60, and the majority of the games haven't even started yet. So that's quite the head start in that league there. So
yeah, all right. Well, maybe you get in the winning side of things this week. I'm going to try to come back after the James Cook thing, and we'll see where we stand after week 2.
Sounds good. Again, this has been the StarCommand podcast, man. We just ask that you would like and subscribe, share with your friends, man. Help a couple of old dudes trying to achieve their childhood dreams get a foot in this world. So with that, we are out, and we will see you next week.
Yeah, give us 30 seconds. Push that like button. Subscribe.